Good, I was going to say good morning, but I think it's good afternoon actually. So it's time for a new topic. We've done a load of stuff with graphs over the last few weeks. Some really good work coming in. Today we're going to move on to fractions. I don't want you to scream at that idea because I actually like fractions, and today I'm going to do one of my favourite lesson-y things that I made up myself a fair few years ago, and I think you'll quite enjoy it, especially if you like a bit of art. Before we get on with that, we're going to have a starter in a moment. Here is today's biscuit. I'd like you to name this one, and if you can, tell me anything you know about the person that it's named after, because it was named after a person, and what did they manage to do? Okay. Right, so today we're starting with some clock maths. So we're going to do it one little stage at a time. Feel free to pause it and have a go, get as far as you can before then seeing if you can stay ahead of me, because it's clock maths. We are racing against time a little bit. So it starts here, 12 add 9. What's 12 add 9? Well, I would add 10 to make 22 and take 1 away, because 9's 1 less than 10 to give me 21. Times by 2. 21 times 2. Double the 2 is 4, double the 1 is 2. 42. 42 divided by 7. How many 7s make 42? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 6 is 36. 36 plus 8, 44. 44 take 11, 33. 33 divided by 3 is 11. 11 times 5 is 55. So you should get to 55 at the end, folks. Hope you enjoyed that almost as much as I did. Now, what we're going to do today is going to require some squares. If you've got some normal squared paper like we have in our exercise books, that is ideal. If you don't, then you've got a couple of options. Whether or not you can find some on the internet that you can print off, there's often some of that. In fact, I'll have a little look and see if I can put some on for you. So I have done that, so you should all have some paper like that. Now, this is going to be about drawing and colouring. And if you've got a ruler, then a ruler can be, but actually I'm going to do it without a ruler. And I would sort of like you to as well. I mean, I might do a ruler for just for the outsidey bits. I'll show you. So what we're going to be dealing with here is we're going to be dealing with equivalent fractions of a half. And you might not think we're going to have that much fun with that, but I'm telling you folks, we're going to have some fun with this. We're going to, and your eyes may be complaining after a while because it is a bit strange. Now what I'd like you to do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm having real trouble with that. I'm going to use a proper ruler instead. And then if I go across 8, which is actually exactly 4 centimeters, if you've got centimeters on your ruler like that, and across another 4 here, and then another 4 straight down here. And we are going to make a few of these, but first up I'd like you to think about how you might cut that into a half with one straight line. And it may be a simple way, it may be a complicated way, I don't know. But I'm going to do it with a diagonal line. Like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, right, I need to colour in a half of that. And now it's going to get a bit artier than this in time, but I'd like you to take some time to shade in your 1/2 of the square. And what today's lesson is going to be all about is finding different, ever more intricate ways we can shade in a half of something, but with a different fraction to a half, but a half that means the same amount as it. Because you may remember being told before that if you multiply the top and bottom number of a fraction by the same number, you get an equivalent fraction. But you may not have necessarily been too sure of what that meant. So we've got a half there. Now we are going to need a load more of these squares. So I'm going to leave a gap of 3 squares between, just so I've got a nice little distance between them. I'm going to draw the same thing again. So from 14 to 18 is 4 centimeters. Do that again down here. And now that I've done that, I'm going to take my pencil so things don't get smashed. I'm going to start off by cutting it in half, but then I'm going to cut it in half again using the other diagonal. And now I have got 1, 2, 3, 4 parts instead of 2. So my whole has been divided into quarters, into 4 parts. And if I'm going to shade in a half of it, I'm going to need to shade in 2 of those quarters. Now when I do it, so that they look, I'm not going to shade this one and this one in to look like that, because 1, it would be boring, but 2, you wouldn't be able to appreciate the quarters being as different as they could be. So my rule is going to be, I've started with a pencil here. Oh well, I'll do that for now, and I'll come in with a green on the next one after that. So, and you may have a pencil as well. If you have got some crayons and you want to go pause the video and nip off and get yourself something nice to colour with, then go for it. And I'll be really interested to see how any of you have got on with this. Now, having done that one, the rule I'm going to have is I'm only allowed to colour in portions of my fraction that aren't touching. Now you may say these are touching at the point, but a point in maths actually has no real size to it, so it doesn't count as having a distance. So as long as the sides aren't touching each other, then we've got different ones. And now I've got a little pattern here that, depending on whether you're looking at the pencil, you might call that a bow tie, and if you were looking at the white areas, you might think of it as like an egg timer, something like that. Those of you who have seen Night at the Museum, or was it Night at the Museum 2? I'm not sure. Anyway, that's the first 2. Now before we do it, the next 2, I want you to draw 2 more squares, 8 squares by 8 squares. Now actually I've gone and drawn another 4, because I am going to be using all 4 of these, and maybe even further, depending on how much time it all takes. So first up, but before we even do this, I wonder if you've got any idea what equivalent fraction we're going to go for next. There is another one in 3/7, but we're not going to go for that, because we're going to be looking this time at what happens if we just keep cutting everything in half each time. So that's 2 quarters, but if I was to cut all my quarters in half, I would get 8ths, and I would need to colour in half of those 8 to colour in a half of the shape. So it would need to be 4/8 that were coloured in. Now, how do I cut the 4 triangles that I've got, which are my quarters, in half? I can do it vertically and horizontally, and that's going to give me those triangles there. Now to colour that in, I'm going to pick one triangle and carefully colour that in before I worry about which other ones I'm going to do. Now, I can't colour that one in, so I must colour this one in. Can't colour that one, so I must colour this. Can't colour that, so I must colour this. So that's what I'm going to do. And this is going to give us something which has got a kind of symmetry that's different to this one. Well, actually, this has got both kinds. This has got reflection symmetry. I could put a mirror line down there and you'd get the same thing. In fact, you could put more than one mirror line down that would work. You could put a mirror line across there as well. But if you tried to put a mirror line here, you'd find things went wrong. If you put a mirror straight down the middle, it doesn't look quite the same. But this is quite an attractive pattern all the same, and we can recognize the pattern. It's got what is called rotational symmetry, which means it looks the same as you turn it. Every time you turn it 1/4 turn, it looks the same as it did before. It ends up in the same position. Right, so there's our 4/8. Some of you may have done a nicer job of colouring that in than me. I don't know. Right, anyway, so we've done 8ths. So we are going to cut all of these in half again, which means we'll have twice as many pieces. So as the pieces of a fraction get smaller, the number of them increases to have the same amount. So we've got 16 on the bottom, that means they're small pieces, and the number on the top tells us how many of the pieces we've got. So to be equal to half of 16 is 8, so we would need 8/16. Now, in order to get these, pause the video and see if you can just set it up to where we get to 8ths first of all. And if you're confused about that, well, we started by putting in both the diagonals, and then we went for the vertical down the middle and the horizontal across the middle. And now that we've done that, we've got all of these triangles, and we can put them in middle by, if you consider that we've now got 4 triangles looking like that, like we had at the beginning, and we're going to do the same thing that we did, and we're going to cut each of those quarters into a half again, and that means that we've now got, which looks a bit like this, but we've got 4 of it. So I'm going to colour it in the same way, but again you need to be careful, so you might want to just watch how I get started off before you carry on colouring in. I'm going to colour in the first bit, the top quarter, just the way that I did before. But then what would be right if I did that and that? These are touching, aren't they? So I go from my bow tie to my egg timer, and I colour in those two there. Now below the egg timer, if I put another egg timer, then those would be touching, so I then have to go to a bow tie. And this means that once again our shape is going to have rotational symmetry. You could do a quarter turn, and when it turns a quarter, the bow tie would become a egg timer, and so on. So now I colour this one in here, and I've just got this down here to get to the finish, and there you go, we've done 8/16. So if we've done 8/16, what's going to come next? Double 16 is 32, and what are we going to try and do over here? Double 32 is 64. So the first, and how many of those? Well, it'll be half of 32, which is actually the 16 we had before, and the 32 is now that, because we're doubling the numbers each time. The numbers are moving on. So you might want to pause it and have a go and see how far you can get, or you may want to do it with me. So we start off with our diagonals. Then we do the vertical and the horizontal. Then we do the diagonals of the quarters. And that's got us to the 16ths, but we need to turn those into 32s. Now the last thing we did was went diagonal, so now we switch back to vertical and horizontal, and you may see that we've got this line coming straight down here, and I can also do that one going straight down there, and then cut in half there and also there. And it's starting to get a little more confusing, isn't it? But anyway, so now that I've done that, I have got 4 windmills. Oh no, I've coloured in the wrong bit. You'll have to give me a moment. Oh well, I managed to rub it out a bit, but fortunately I hadn't gone too hard. But it's a pain, isn't it? When your crayons do not rub out well, do they? But so that's why it's important to pay attention. So then it'll be this one here to that one there, to that one there, to that one there. So if that one is, I don't do that one, so I'm going to put dots in so I don't make that mistake again. And then it's not that one, so it's that one, that one, that one, that one. Then I'm going to shade that in. Now I can take my time a little bit. If you've got lots of different colours, you can use lots of different colours, can't you? It's up to you. But what I'm doing here is it's taking so much longer, isn't it, than just shading in a half, because 16 over 32, it's not the same thing as a half, but it means the same amount of stuff altogether. So if you look at the amount of paper that the square covers, I will have coloured in the same amount of green here by the time I've finished as I have done there. But it's taken me longer because what I'm trying to colour in is lots of smaller things that takes more attention and focus, and I've got to commit. Instead of doing just one triangle, I've got 16 triangles to colour in. Yes, they're smaller, but it can still take me time. Right, so the last one, 32 over 64. First up, just go through the routine, cut it into a half, then cut that into quarters with both the diagonals. So it goes, we do the diagonals, and then we do the vertical and horizontal. That's got us to quarters. No, it hasn't. It's got us to eighths. To get us to 16ths, we do the diagonals in each corner or in each quarter. And here's the last one. And try not to rush and start thinking about what you're going to do next, because that's when things go wrong. So then to get from 16ths to 32ths, we need to put in the vertical and horizontals again. Which is what we did before. And now I've got 16 boxes like this that have got just one diagonal. And so I'm going to do that diagonal there, then I'm going to miss out a row so that I can do all 3 of those diagonals in one go. Then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm doing all my ones going up from left to right. What would be a positive line of best fit, wouldn't it, if it was a correlation? Now I'll do the negative ones, going down from left to right. And we're going to get a whole load of bow ties and egg timers. 16 of them. And we're going to need to colour in each of those in the same way that we did these. So I'm just going to put some dots in first of all. There's a bow tie. Next to that's not a bow tie, it's an egg timer. Next to an egg timer, you'll always have a bow tie. Next to a bow tie, you'll have an egg timer. Next to an egg timer, you'll have a bow tie. Below an egg timer, you'll have a bow tie. Below a bow tie, you'll have an egg timer. You start to get the idea. Bow tie, egg timer. And I'm going to keep on going with this. And you should end up with something that looks like this. Now I know that some of you get down on yourselves if things don't go quite right. You will make mistakes doing this. I've done it loads of times. I always make mistakes as well. It doesn't matter. What's important is you're thinking about this whole thing of an equivalent fraction and what's going on, and also realise fractions can be beautiful. You may even decide you want to go and take it one further and have a go at doing 64 over 128. So I'm just going to carry on colouring this in now, folks, whilst I say goodbye. Oh, I've gone and coloured one in a little bit wrong there. Fortunately, I'm using a pencil, so I'll be able to rub that out. Anyway, see you next time.